Today we're going to do, Greg, did you have anything you wanted to talk about at all?
Nothing important. Something I've been playing with some fun video stuff, but if you've got something else in mind,
Okay, well, yeah, we'll come back to that. Aletha had been asking about doing some vocal mixing, and I don't have a session in front of me with a lot of vocals in it, but I just grabbed a couple splice samples, and I thought we might drop this in. So here's a guitar part I found. I just added this kick to it here. Actually, I don't like that kick. um, So I don't know why I'm being picky about the kick. It doesn't matter. But I put this vocal that I found that is in the same pack. Again, I'd never seen this before, some pack. And I think, and I kind of split it up a little bit. I think it kind of goes.
Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for. Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for.
I don't even know if those are supposed to go together, but I think they kind of sound all right together. So what I want to do first is I'm going to duplicate this track, this vocal. We're going to concentrate on these vocals. I like making my vocals pink. I don't know why. They just stick out if I make them pink. And we'll make one a different shade of pink. How about that there? And we're going to, first of all, if this was out of tune, that's the first thing I'd think about is tuning it a little bit. This is really, whoever sang this, sang it very straight on. I probably wouldn't even tune this at all. It sounds really good to me. But we're, for the sake of example, we're going to drop Melodyne. Now, I use Melodyne for tuning, and I use the studio version. What happened? Oh, it's wanting me to update. Can you see Melodyne, this screen? Okay. And I'm going to grab it and put it on the other track as well. And the nice thing about the studio version is when you open up the plugin, you can see both instances of Melodyne. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just play both of these and bring them into Melodyne. Now I'm using Ableton Live, and it is using, I think this is a VST plugin or AU plugin. This is not, they have these new, I think it's called an ARA plugins, which
so ARA is still a VST plugin, but it's a mode that the DAW has to support so that it can do real-time communication to Melodyne.
okay, yes, I don't have that. I wish I did. I wish to God I did. Melodyne has always been a little bit, it's like having a second DAW within your DAW, and it's annoying. I don't care for, but it's so powerful that I keep using it. You know what I mean? So I'm going to just record both of these in here. I'm going to turn on the volume on both of these a little bit. And I'm just going to bring them in by transferring the data in. So I record both of them, and then I hit play, and it would be like,
Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for.
okay. So I've got two instances of it. I have one up here and one down here. Now they're identical. And the reason I brought him two is I want to try to do some harmonies here. So this is in, I think this is in B minor, it says. Oh, wonderful. That's a fun scale to work in. So if I wanted to, let's just look at the first instance. So I'm going to mute the second instance and look at the first one. And if I wanted to, we could use this. We could choose the scale we wanted to, chromatic snap, chord scale. Is that it? I never use this, by the way. Key. Maybe it's key. Well, I don't use it, so I'm not going to do something I don't normally do.
Hey,
So if I wanted to just tune some of these notes, the way I do it, and there are people that are way better experts at Melodyne than I am, but I just go in and find where the note, like when the vocalist hits a note and sustains, I just usually just adjust where it's sustaining.
headshot.
So these two are very strong there. So I might use the pitch tool here, and I'm going to just adjust those just a little bit. He was a little flat. Actually, he sounded great to me. And it's because a lot of times people that are just slightly flat, especially for pop music, often sound really good. It just fits for some reason. If they're a little sharp, it doesn't sound good. But I think this is going to be okay. So let me see here.
Headshot.
So because we did that, we should probably do that first note.
Headshot.
So now where that lands and where this lands is very much perfect, or very much on pitch. If we wanted to make it sound very auto-tuned, we could do what's called the pitch modulation tool. It's how fast these notes run into each other. So right here, this note drops from a G to an F sharp. And if we grab those two notes and I make these lines very smooth, it's going to sound like this.
Headshot.
And that suddenly sounds like T-Pain, right? You know, or it sounds like a rapper or something. I'm going to undo that because I don't want that vibe. So you can tune a lot of things without making it sound fake, you know, and it's all about that. That's often called the retune speed. So you'll see that in like Isotope and Antair's software, the auto-tune software, but it's the same thing. In here, it's called pitch modulation tool. So
Headshot.
that sounds good to me. And then we're going to go to the next note.
Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
So I like all that, but maybe right here, fighting
for headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
We're going to just adjust a couple of those notes, not all of them. And now that's a little more pitch perfect. Again, I wouldn't have even touched this because I think it's so good anyway. Use your ears way more than what's visual. It'll always lead you in the right spot. Well, not always, but it has a better chance of it. If you're trying to go after what looks good and what looks perfect, you'll oftentimes make more mistakes than if you just use your ears. A lot of things don't need to be corrected. They're done. If you're using good vocals, you know, it's kind of like polishing a turd. You know, if you have a turd, it's hard to polish. But if you've got a really good rock that's polishable, you can polish it.
Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
All right, so that's cool.
Headshot.
And now we're going to add those other instruments back in.
Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
Okay, so now let's drop in a little bit of, well, let's look at the other one now. So I'm going to turn that one on. And it's down here. Now, the cool thing about Melodyne is I can turn this on, and I'm going to grab all these notes, all the notes in this instance, and we're going to bring them up. I don't know. Let's just say a third.
Headshot.
All right, so we're going to have to fix stuff, but when I did that, now I can select this little gray thing here, and I can see what the other one's doing. So I can reference that. And this is what's great about the studio version is you can see multiple instances of the tuning at once.
Headshot.
So that note there is going to work. So we're going to select anything there.
Headshot. You got headshot. You got dreams.
I'm just using my ear to try to figure out what a harmony would be here, and it probably would never use it. I'm going to turn down the volume on that instance as well.
Headshot. headshot. You got dreams with fire. Headshot. You got dreams with fighting
Fighting for. And the reason why you can't straight, like when you're doing a harmony, the reason why you can't just go a perfect third up is because of the scale itself. You still have to follow the scale that it's in B minor. And there's a way to just make this all a B minor scale. And so we don't have to look at it. It already knows it's B minor, but I can't remember how to make it look. Key snap. Oh, there it is. Okay. So B, C sharp, D, E. Is that right? B, C sharp. It should be D sharp.
If you're in B minor, isn't it B, D, F sharp?
Yeah. So that's correct, right? Let's see. The B minor is also. Here. An F sharp and a C sharp in it, right? So an F sharp and a C sharp in it because it's the relative minor of D major. So we got a C sharp and an F sharp. So that is correct. So it knows what those are. So I can use this now to follow to say any note I have in the harmony needs to be on one of these notes here that are not grayed out, right? So let's choose that one. This one here.
Fighting for.
So now we can go back.
Headshot.
I don't really like that second note.
Headshot. Headshot.
Kind of like that better. And
headshot. You got dreams with headshot. You got dreams with fighting for.
Okay, so that kind of fits now. I would probably turn that down quite a bit.
Headshot. You got dreams with fighting for.
And then I would probably take the whole this whole instance here and I'd shift it a little bit. I'd take the whole thing and shift it just a little flat.
Headshot. You got dreams with fighting for.
What it does is it makes it not so perfectly pitched, because if it's too perfectly pitched, you don't even hear the harmony. It's just so, it's so perfectly in its interval, you know, or a subdivision of the melody frequency. So now I've got a little harmony going on. If I wanted to, I could do another one. I could also make the whole thing a little delayed. I could use the time tool and we could just, if we wanted to, just slightly offset the whole thing.
Headshot. You got dreams with fighting for.
Probably not even noticeable, but I just offset it just a tiny bit. So again, we're just changing up so that it's, because we don't have two different recordings of the vocalist. Normally I would want a different instance of him singing to make a harmony out of. Even if it was the same melody, I would want a different instance because it gives a thickness to the whole thing. If you're trying to create harmonies out of melodies, it can be a little thin sometimes. So anyway, let's say we like that. Let's say that's cool. All right, let's do a little mixing now. So we got our little vocal thing here, and one of the first things I could do is I could group these together, and so I could just drop stuff on one of these groups together. And I'm going to start with grabbing iZotope's Nectar. Nectar is their version of a vocal processing tool. And we could use a preset, we could do stuff like that, but I don't need the pitch. So that's actually not even on. It's not on until you hit that button. The EQ is probably pretty good already, but we might want to roll off some.
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting for.
Yeah, I don't want it too thin, so I kind of like that already. Let's see about the.
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting for.
Might just compress those, just the of those. It's a slow ratio, or a slow attack, and the ratio is kind of small. It's not that much. And then oftentimes what I would do is I would drop in I'd go into the my plugins. I'd probably go down to the Universal Audio plugins, and I'd probably drop in an instance of a channel strip. So I'm trying to remember which one. I think this is the one I have. It'll scream at me if I don't. Yeah, I have this one. I don't know why it's screaming at me. It's because I haven't set this up on this computer yet. But I'd probably drop in something.
Headshot.
And just to give, what I'm trying to do is give it more of an analog feel. And then I'd also probably use, I love my a compressor that I like a lot. It's called a 1176. I like the 1176 a lot. It's just this guy here.
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting for.
And it has a real, it makes the vocal sound very close.
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting for.
Just really liked how the feel of this compressor. I used to have one, a physical one in my studio for a long time. I was borrowing, and it had tube amps in it, and it was super fragile. But there's a reason why 1176 has been rebuilt so many times, is because it just has a great sound to it. Very very warm. So I don't know how it sounds over the Zoom call, but on my end, it sounds very nice and warm. So if I wanted to, I could add a little reverb. One of the things I'd probably do is, because I have this harmony here, I'd probably let's just do this. This is my melody, this is my harmony. I want to spread that harmony out a little bit. And you can do that using I like the relay tool. This is just by, this comes with Neutron, I believe. And it's just a utility. You can pan things, but you can widen things really nicely. So we're going to take this here.
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting.
We're going to widen that.
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting.
Now,
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting for.
melody's sort of down the middle, and the harmony's out a little bit. I'd still probably turn it down a little bit.
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting for.
Okay, so now let's give it some saturation, maybe a little bit. Let's give it a little bit of distressor or decapitator. I always say distressor, decapitator, which is Greg's favorite plugin ever. And we're going to go down, and I'm going to grab one of these. I usually like this Angry Vox. Well, that might be too much. Let's do a mild tube Vox.
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting.
Let's turn all of this down a little bit. Let's do like 5, and let's do this down to about 10.
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting.
See what happens if we add a little more drive.
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting for.
We want it to sound a little more rocky. I don't want it to.
Headshot, you got dreams worth fighting for.
Okay, so that's kind of nice. I got a little bit of saturation, a little crispiness to the voice. Again, it all depends on what the feel and flow you're going for. The next thing I would probably do is start thinking about a reverb. And you can do this like I have return tracks down here. So we can start with that. I've got a reverb already on here, and I can just add using my auxiliary send. I can just add some reverb.
Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for.
So that's nice.
Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for.
I'm going to make the decay a little bit shorter, but the size a little bit more, and give me a little less high cut too.
Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for. Hey, child, you got.
Sounds a little overly compressed to me. I'm going to turn down some of the compression. I'm not even using that channel strip. Get rid of that. So this
Hey, child.
let's the weird thing about this compressor is it doesn't have a threshold knob. The threshold is determined by how much input you use, which is really weird.
Hey, child. Hey, child. Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for. Hey, child. Hey, child.
It's still compressing a little too hard on that first word.
Hey, child.
Compressor here.
Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for.
Might have been the way it was recorded too.
Hey, child, you got.
In fact, yeah.
Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for.
So now if I want to add a little delay to this, I've got another send here. I can add that here. And the great thing about delay, I've already got that on my my B return, is I'm going to use this compressor here to sidechain from this group. This is my Vox group, right? And I'm going to go back to my delay, and I'm going to sidechain from that so that when he's singing, I'm not getting delay, but when he stops singing, the delay comes in. So
Hey, child, you got.
let's see here. Let's add a little bit more.
Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for.
So this is just a nice, easy way of controlling that delay, because it can really run away from you. When you have vocals, when the person's singing, you really want that to be legible most of the time. You don't want a ton of effects stomping over it, from like reverbs from the last phrase and delays and coming all over it. It'll really muddy up your mix. So what this is doing is saying, I'm going to allow some delay to happen from the last phrases based on those transients. But when he's singing, duck that delay down, let it just sit there until he stops singing, and then allow it to breathe in.
Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for. Hey, child, you got dreams worth fighting for.
Does that make sense with you guys on that? Okay, so the way the delay I have on this is just, these are just stock plugins of Ableton. I've got, this delay is just, there's two delays basically. There's one on the left, and these are 16th notes. So this is 8 16th notes, which means it's a half note, basically. It's a half note delay, and this is a quarter note delay. And you could change that. You could do a dotted eighth note or whatever. And these are filters for each one of these. And then you can control the feedback, how long it progresses, and the volume and the panning of it. And I usually keep it pretty standard like that. And then I use this compressor to adjust that what we were just talking about with allowing or reducing the volume of it. You're really compressing it, but you're compressing it so hard. My ratio on this compressor is 63:1. So you're just squashing it. You're limiting anything that's over that threshold.
Hey, child, You got dreams worth fighting for. Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for. Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for. Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
Probably that's a little too much delay, but it's good to hear it really well before you start adjusting it. But now I can turn it down, make it fit in the mix a little bit better.
Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for. Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
And what we can do here is I'm going to keep adjusting this until I get the delay to be a little more. I want it to be noticeable, but not catch your attention.
Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for. 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 Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
Okay, so that would be, now I also am thinking about the EQ of it. The whole thing sounds just a little dull to me. And I might go into the EQ and adjust a little bit of the high end.
Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for. Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
The other thing you could do is, if you thought, I wonder if some of these guitar frequencies and the vocal frequencies are masking each other, if they're overlaying each other, we can dip some of those guitar frequencies out based on the vocals. And the way we do that is I'm going to drop Neutron onto my guitar track, because right now I have nothing on it. It's just the recording. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I want to see how it sits against this. And the way we're going to do this is I need to drop another relay on here so it can see it. For some reason, it doesn't work with Nectar. I don't know why. But now I'm going to say, I want to see this one right here against this track. And if I hit play,
Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
all those areas of those colors, it's detecting where these two frequencies are colliding, where the vocals and this is colliding. So I'm going to tell it to just learn those frequencies.
Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for. Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
I'm actually not sure if analyzes the input signal and adjusts the frequency value. That might not be for that. Anyway, I'm going to do this kind of manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I want to dip this, and I'm going to do a bell curve here. I'm going to dip this because the main area is in here, right? And I'm going to do kind of a wide Q. The Q is how wide this bell is, right? I'm going to do a wide Q, and I want to dip it based on the other one. So right now,
Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
right now it's just static. I'm just dipping it. But what I could do is hit dynamic and then hit sidechain external and say, I want it from this other signal. And it knows which signal because I need it selected over here, Vox group here. So now it will dip based on the vocal according to this much.
Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for. Headshot. You got dreams worth fighting for.
So we could be more surgical with that and try to identify more specifically the signals, the frequencies that are masking. I think there's more tools in here that allow for masking. Do you guys know?
Neutron 4 has the unmasking module, which basically does the same thing you were just demonstrating, but automatically. You just say unmask for this other track, and then it does the dynamic EQ based on that. So yeah, it basically same results, but it does it more precisely, more easily.
Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna have to get that at Black Friday this week. This
It's really nice.
yeah. All right. I need to upgrade my ozone as well. So anyway, that's kind of what you're doing is you're basically saying, I want these frequencies to kind of, I want to make room in the guitar because the guitar is has a lot of those mids, right? It's a beautiful mid guitar and it's got some effects on it. It's very washy. It's beautiful, but it also means that it's going to be harder for those vocals to cut through. And if I wanted to dip now, like now that I've done this, I can probably turn the vocals down a little bit.
Hey child, you got dreams worth fighting for. Hey child, you got dreams worth fighting for. Hey child.
My only issue is I think this part is too quiet, and I think it's the way it was recorded. So I'm going to go back into Melodyne.
Hey child.
We're just going to grab that first phrase, and I'm going to just bring up the amplitude on that.
Hey child, you got dreams. Hey child.
That on the harmonies as well.
Hey child, you got dreams worth fighting for. Hey child.
Turn off Decapitator and see how it sounds without it.
Hey child, you got dreams worth fighting for.
Add a little more reverb.
Hey child, you got dreams worth fighting for. Hey child, you got dreams worth fighting for. Hey child, you got dreams worth fighting for. Hey child, you got dreams worth fighting for.
So yeah, those are just steps I would take. I mean, it's never going to be exactly in the same order. A lot of times when I first get vocals, I mean, the first thing you want to do is comp the vocals, meaning you want to take the best set pieces of each section, figure out what the top line's going to be, and then figure out what your stacks are going to be. And you don't want to repeat any of them because you'll start getting phase issues unless you're going to do what I did, where you completely change the pitch of a track. You never want to double up on any of those tracks because you can start getting weird phase issues, and you'll hear it immediately. Listen for phase issues. After you've comped the tracks, the next thing you really want to do is adjust your volume. You can use programs like, what's the one that kind of adjusts volume for you without compressing? It's I don't remember the name. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It's not Vocaline. It's anyway, I actually go through
Vocal Writer, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Vocal Writer. I think that's right.
I don't use it, but that name sounds right.
Yeah, and I've used them a couple times, but Vocal Writer, yep, that's it. So I might drop that in on one of these, and it basically adjusts the volume for you. It's listening ahead. Now, I find this very confusing plugin, and I've never really mastered it, and I probably need to take time to really learn it because it could probably save a lot of time, but I don't use it very often at all. And it's just simply because it's cumbersome. It's just a cumbersome plugin. So what I'll do is, honestly, I can oftentimes look at these blobs on my screen. If this wasn't in Melodyne, because it's in Melodyne, it's really reading from Melodyne, but I'll just look at these and adjust these by hand. I'll go in and just manipulate them to where they're pretty even, depending on the phrase. But again, use your ear to determine which words you want to have stick out, which ones you need to pull back and soften. And I do that before I ever compress, because if you push everything into a compressor, you're kind of trying to solve a lot of problems with one tool, when really that one tool should just be solving one problem, just anything that's over, certain peaks. After you do that, after you really kind of sweeten up the vocals. Don't worry about any effects and stuff until you get your vocals tuned, timed, aligned, comped, stacked. Figure all those things out, and it should start sounding good before you add anything to it. It should sound dry, but it should sound good too. And once you've done all that, then you start adding just touches of reverb here and there. One of the biggest mistakes I see with a lot of new producers is they add way too much reverb to stuff right off the bat. I did the same thing. I was, because it's exciting. It's like, ooh, this is nice, this sweet, whatever. And you just load up reverb, and oftentimes, unless you're doing something like a Lana Del Rey song or an Enya or some big ballad, a lot of times you don't use a lot of reverb. You just use a touch of it. So learning to do that is really important. And then learning to use that delay, use, those slapback delays or echoes, things like that, can really add a really cool effect, but use them very sparingly and automate them. They don't need to always be there. Sometimes in the verses, the delays aren't really there. And then the choruses, I'll bring the delays in, and it's stuff you don't really notice, but it adds to the overall sweetness of the vocal. You're just embellishing the vocal to a point where it just sounds good without really knowing why it sounds good. Right. Do you guys want to chime in on anything or add anything, or do you have any questions about anything I did?
No, interesting to watch the process.
Okay, good.
I guess a comment for anybody watching the replay: if you're on a budget, rather than something expensive like Neutron, the TDR Nova, TDR Nova 2, the newer version, will do sidechain dynamic EQ, so you can do the same kind of unmasking stuff for free if you can't afford the more expensive tools.
Cool, great advice. Thank you. Good tip. Awesome. Another thing I like to always do that I kind of mentioned, but I didn't get really into it, is I like to run my vocals before I start running through effects. After I get them all ready and I get them kind of dialed in, I like to run them through an emulator that emulates an analog, like a soundboard, like a channel strip from a soundboard, an SSL, API, Neve, something like that, where you get the sweetness of an analog sound, and it'll help all the effects sound better. You may not notice it right away, but when your effects that you might be putting in later, they're going to sound better and better and sweeter because of that. And you don't need to crank it or anything. You're just running through an emulation. This is why a lot of people still go to analog soundboards. In fact, my first few mixes of a lot of songs I did, I used to pay a lot of money to sound engineers down in South Phoenix that had a huge SSL console. And we would take all my digital recordings and throw it into each track. And then he'd sit there and mix it for several days. And looking back, he was kind of polishing a turd. My song wasn't very good, and my production wasn't very good, but he was making it sound a lot better than I gave it to him. And it was because of those, whatever happens inside of those consoles, which is it's actually distortion. It's actually distorting the sound in such a way that's actually sweet to the ear. So they've been able to emulate those, and you can buy these plugins, the UA plugins and all kinds of great emulators that I strongly suggest. I love the 1176 compressor. I think it brings vocals really forward in a way that is almost cheating to me. It's so simple to use. And then I start putting other things in. EQ, we didn't even talk a lot about EQ because this was EQ'd so well, but you'll sometimes have to find frequencies that are annoying or problematic. We didn't even talk about de-essers. De-essers are if you have sibilants, like, some of the recordings I get from singers have a lot of sibilants in it because they're recording in a bedroom or whatever, and it's just so crispy that it's highly annoying. You'll have to control that. You've got to find a way to control it. If you can't get them to re-record it, sometimes you can say, dude, I'm not working on that. That vocal recording is awful. Choose your battles. So, well, guys, thanks for hanging out with me. Sorry we went over time a little bit, but I think this was valuable, and I think I'm going to crop this down and put it on YouTube just for anybody out there that might get some value out of this. If you are new to this channel, If you're hanging out with us and you're watching a replay and want to join our course, go to the triplethreatartist.com. We'd love to have you. All right, guys. See ya. See you next week.